Hey, Shalloners and Believers and Baldies, welcome back. Today, I want to talk about something that I hear like variations of from you guys a lot, which is like, how do I ignore or not get irritated by my boyfriend's bad boy past? And who else in Hollywood but Hailey Baldwin can identify with this issue more, because obviously she's married to Justin Bieber and he has the baddest of boys past. Like, some seriously not great things have happened in his past, namely his on-off terrible toxic romance with Selena Gomez. And you guys have asked me to do like a deep dive on Justin and Selena. Long story short, he got her addicted to drugs, and I think he feels really guilty about that, which is why he still stays in contact with her. But we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. First, I want to remind you guys that if you want to get in touch with me and have a private convo, find me on the Instant Go app. My username is ShallonXO, and click chat to be connected right away. And follow me on Insta, Twitter, and Snapchat at ShallonXO, and click like and subscribe for new videos every Friday and a whole bunch in between. So Justin and Hailey, in order for them to have a relationship that works and moves forward, you got to forget the past. You can't look ahead and behind at the same time. And I've gotten a lot of questions from you guys recently where it's like, I'm dating this guy, he treats me like a queen, but he's told me he basically was a fuckboy in the past. Like, he ghosted girls, he only had one night stands, he was a jerk, but he like realizes it, and I see no red flags with him now, but still it bothers me. And like, he's slept with so many people and I just can't get over it. And you know what I say all the time? Who asked you? Who asked you for your opinion on his story? When people open up to us and when they tell us things that they aren't exactly the hero of the story, people don't like to tell stories where they come out looking bad. That's typically not what humans do. We all want to tell a story. Certainly to the person we're dating, we want to look the most mateable, the best, the most solid we can. When we tell a story where we don't exactly come across in a flattering light, we're opening up our emotional underbelly. Oh, here it is, my soft, squishy, sensitive, vulnerable parts. And when you say like, well, I don't like that, you know what you're doing? You're poking. You're poking their emotional underbelly. And you know what that makes someone do? Turtle on up. That person's not going to open up to you again, and I don't blame them. When someone tells us their history, they're not giving it to you. They're not passing it across your desk like you're the president and this is a bill, and you're like, am I going to approve or veto? Oh, no, I veto that. I don't accept that. No, veto. Who the fuck do you think you are? Some real talk here. Because would you like it if your boyfriend or your friend or your parents or me or anyone else, when you opened up and it's like, oh, this is how many people I've slept with, here's something I did that I'm not proud of, and they're like, well, you know what? You should be ashamed of yourself. You would be like disgusted and horrified, right? That's not why you open up to people. So you need to keep in mind that when someone shares, you have no right to pass judgment on their story, on their history. I find it abhorrent when guys do that to us, and guys do it all the time. I did a video like a year or so ago where I say the one question you should never answer is, how many people have you slept with? If a guy asks you, it is 0% his business. None of his business at all. None. I don't tell it to any guy. I don't even really tell it to my girlfriends. It's no one's business. You know why? Because sex is like anything else. You got to practice to be good at it. No one asks Adam Levine, like, oh, you ask him about his origins as a rock star, and then are like, ugh, ew, gross. Don't tell me about when you first started playing guitar. That person would be considered psychotic. It's like, all right, well, he had to start somewhere. He had to get to where he is now somehow, but you don't want to acknowledge that. And that's the thing about the people we date having a past. Everything that everyone has experienced has contributed to who they are today, positively or negatively. Maybe you don't like who he is today. We'll get to that in a minute. So for you to be like disgusted by the process that got him here, assuming he is a good guy and he is treating you well, like, you are negating everything he's learned from everything that's happened to him. Again, positive and negative, everything that he has done to other people. And yet you're happy with the outcome. Okay, you want to eat the food, but you don't want to know how it's made. It's like, bleh. And not only do you not want to know how it's made, you disagree with how it was made. I don't think you should have made those cookies like that. That's a crazy person's logic, right? That's a crazy person's logic. And it certainly isn't a loving logic. It's not a logic and a behavioral directive that's going to like deepen your relationship. Because like I said, he's not going to trust you. And when you judge someone else, guess what they're going to turn around and do? Judge you right on back. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone. I don't think you want your boyfriend throwing open the books to your life and going like, oh, I'm sorry. Remember that time you told me you didn't sit next to Hannah at lunch and you really hurt her feeling? What if he lorded something like that over you? And like a lot of times, not a lot of times, every single time, people who have said this stuff to me, they have had almost zero sexual or romantic experience. Like this is their first boyfriend and like she's his like fifth girlfriend or something like that. And it's like, okay, you might have no history in terms of romance, but you got a history in terms of a lot of other things. Oh, so everything you want to tell him is suddenly ammunition that he's going to load into his gun and fire back at you when he's ready? Because he will. And who can blame him? Because you started it. You fostered that environment. Now there's an adversarial relationship here. So don't be surprised if he gets mean and nasty and holds things over your head. And the other consequence, the other side effect of this is if you treat someone like a criminal, that's exactly what they're going to become. If you go into a relationship being like, well, I don't know about you, he's going to think, consciously or unconsciously, you know what? I've already been convicted. Why not do the crime? She already thinks I'm a cheater. Why am I faithful? She already thinks I'm a douchebag who's going to ghost her. Why should I show up? You know? And it's because nobody likes to be in a relationship where they're not trusted. It's insulting. If someone does something to earn that, that's a different story. So Hailey and Justin, she has obviously had to kind of like look at his past, look at what he's learned from it, and decide to move on. And that's the crucial thing, what he's learned from it. There's a big difference between a guy telling you about his past and telling you about his past and what he has learned from it. And the resonating thing you should hear is shame. Honestly, he should be a little bit ashamed of himself because growth is painful. That's why we call it growing pains. And especially for guys, what makes a guy learn and grow into a quality dude is feeling ashamed of his past behavior. I mean, for a lot of us, think about like if you decided to get fit, there was probably a big moment of shame when you're like, I ate a whole Papa John's order. I'm ashamed. I don't want to feel ashamed. I want to feel healthy and in control and proud of myself. So I'm not going to eat this and I'm going to go to the gym instead, right? A lot of shame is what propels change. And I wish it wasn't true. You know, I wish we could all just like learn from the mistakes of others and never our own, and just live healthy with like no bad feelings to impel us. Unfortunately, that's not the case, but that's fine. So if your boyfriend is telling you about his past and he's like, yeah, I treated girls bad. My boyfriend was a fuckboy, huge fuckboy, and he knows it and he acknowledges it. And he's like, dating you, I feel like the girls who dated me. Like I'm always pawing for your attention and I'm obsessed with you and I love you. And that's how girls treated me. And I was like, oh, I treated them so bad and I'm so ashamed of myself. And now that I see things from the other side, I will never act like that again to a woman, you know, whether it's you or whether we break up and I date someone else, you know, but the growth and the learning is because there's like that self-awareness and that shame. And that's why I don't get caught up in my boyfriend's past, because it's like, I can tell he's learned from it. So if a guy has that sad shame feeling, let it go. He's learned. He's acknowledging it enough that he's communicating it to you because he wants you to know that he's learned. He wants you to know that like, hey, everything he's doing is based on having done it the wrong way. So now he knows the right way to do. He's not just like, this isn't just beginner's luck. You know what I mean? And like, I want a guy with a past. I want a guy who has worked out all those kinks. I'm nobody's practice round. I'm nobody's dress rehearsal. By the time you get to me, honey, you better have worked out those kinks. You come correct or you don't come at all. More ways than one. So like, I like to know that someone has a past. And we all have a past. And guess what? The older you get, the more past people are going to have. Unless you want to date someone who just hatched out of a pod, who has like no history, no experience. There's a big downside to not having experience with girls. Because like he's going to be working out all of like those obstacles and bumps and growing pains on you. That sucks. I don't want, like I said, I'm no one's practice. No, get all that stuff out of your system and learn before you come to me. But with Hailey and Justin, there's another element. And with a lot of our relationships, Justin's behavior perhaps was more than just youthful indiscretion. A lot of it was. But a lot of it, as I've said in other videos, is a pathology. And I've said this before, like fame freezes you at the age in which you experience, because fame is kind of trauma, and that's what trauma does. It's called discontinuity, I believe, I think. And so Justin is kind of stuck at like age 15, and the behaviors of a 15-year-old are not very conducive to a husband. That's why people don't marry at 15, So Hailey has matured at a more appropriate pace. Justin hasn't. So, the other side of this coin, like someone's history, is the best indicator of future behavior is past behavior. And Justin, I think that his sort of maniacal clinging to religion is worrisome, because that means he is relying on a higher power to police his behavior, because maybe he can't do it organically himself. Do you know what I mean? And like, that's better than nothing policing his behavior, but it's best if you have your own sort of moral code that you're following inside, that you aren't necessarily having to get refreshed in your mind every Sunday at church, or if you just don't want to do that anymore. You've slept with a bunch of people, and all right, it's what you want, something different. But his sort of like death grip on this religion thing makes me think that like, if you took that away and if you let him do whatever he wants in a vacuum, he might kind of keep doing the same things. A lot of drugs, a lot of girls, a lot of parties, a lot of self-destructive behavior. So that makes me worry for Hailey and Justin. But I've done a lot of videos on them. You can check those out. So yeah, what if your boyfriend, it's like, you think maybe this behavior isn't done? Maybe the past is kind of going to become present. And like, I know that. And that's kind of how it was with my husband. When we met, like one of the first, like, when we had like the deep dive, the emotional underbelly showing, he told me that his last serious relationship, he was living with a girl and he found out she was like texting some guy or whatever. And he stopped speaking to her. He said he would go into his room at night, and he would put on his noise canceling headphones, and she would cry and carry on and try and get him to talk to her. And he was just like a brick wall, and he shut her out until she moved out. And that was always in the back of my mind. And I had said to him, I'm like, my greatest fear is like you doing something like that to me. Baby, I would never do that. I would never do that. No. That is exactly what he did to me. I mean, exactly. I got ghosted in my own home, in my own marriage. He stopped speaking to me until I moved out. I think I lasted a little bit longer than that girl did. I lasted about 6 weeks. That's a really long time to not have your spouse speak to you. It's really painful. And, that was always in the back of my mind. And I look back, I can say like, I don't know that he acknowledged when he was talking about that past relationship, how like inappropriate that was. I don't think that was a strategy that didn't work for him. It worked. Like she left, like it worked. So that should have been a red flag. I mean, it was a red flag. Like it was a constant red flag that I was always thinking about in the back of my mind in our relationship. And when it happened, I was just like, motherfucker, I knew it. But knowing it doesn't mean you can change it. And I'm not saying I regret marrying him or regret loving him because of how that ended. It was, unimaginable. It was so horrible. But I guess my point is like, you have to know that even if you're like, I told you so to yourself, you're gonna be okay. You will. And the whole point of dating is to learn, right? It's like anything else. Like I said, you have to practice to be good at it. Every time you practice something, you learn. You learn what works, what doesn't, how to get better, whatever. You can learn which flags to ignore and which not to ignore. And now, like, that happening to me in my marriage gave me a lot of data, because that's when I got this concept of, like, he wasn't appropriately ashamed of his behavior. My boyfriend has been appropriately ashamed of his behavior. And that's why I don't see my boyfriend's behavior as red flaggy as much as I saw my husband's. You know what I mean? Because there was an element of, like, one person learned and one person didn't. And the person who, you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it, right? This phrase exists for a reason. So if your boyfriend is communicating things with a sense of, like, I'm ashamed, don't needle him about that. Shame on you. I'm here to give you the truth. You know that I am. Because then he's going to stop wanting to communicate about this. He's going to block that out, and he's going to stop learning. And he's going to tell himself, like, okay, she obviously missed the point of what I was trying to say. So maybe, why should I work harder? Why should I work hard to be the lion in her life, that Prince Charming she wants? She obviously thinks I'm a douche. It's pretty easy to be a douche. Quite honestly, it's a lot of fun. Maybe I'll just do that. And you don't want to set that up. And I think that's why Justin and Hailey are working so far, is because she has chosen to see him as a person who has been ashamed of his behavior, learned and grown. Whether that's true, time will tell. Because like I said, it's a bit of a pathology. So look at your boyfriend and his relationships and how he describes it and be like, do I think that he has, like, learned from this and is moving on? And if not, what am I going to do if his past scenarios repeats with me? You know what you're going to do? You're going to be fine. You're going to be just fine. Because really, at the end of the day, what other choice do we have, right? We pick up the pieces, we dust ourselves off, we cry, we eat, and then we move forward, learning what those red flags are, the ones you could ignore that maybe aren't that big of a deal, and the ones you should definitely pay attention to, right? So I wish Hailey and Justin a lot of luck. Like I said, they're going to need it. If you guys have more questions on this topic, leave it in the comments section, because I love to talk about it. And if you want to find me on the Instant Go app, have a personal question, want to chit chat privately, my username is ShallonXO. Also follow me at ShallonXO on Insta, Twitter, and Snapchat, and click like and subscribe for new videos all the time.